Hi, welcome everyone to the Animal Reader. The Animal Reader is an animal news website. Every 2 weeks we host a show from Worm in Rotterdam. We're based in the Netherlands. And today we have as a guest John Robb. He's a musician, he's an author. He just wrote the book Manifesto about the life of dolphins. And he's a long-time vegan. Welcome, John.
Hiya, how are you? Okay.
Hi, I'm good, yeah. Like we're finally live.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so first of all, you're gonna turn 60 this year, but how long have you been vegan?
15 years and vegetarian for 37, 38. Yeah.
And I asked this, we're gonna talk about dolphins in a little bit, but I asked him the same question. We had him as a guest about a month ago. So nowadays people can make the connection with being vegan. You see a lot of animal cruelty. We know things. We know it's better for the environment. How did you back then, 37 years ago, make that connection when not so much information was available on it?
Well, mainly for me because of music and some of the ideas that came out of punk. I mean, punk was so contradictory. I mean, some people probably ended up eating more meat because of punk, but I was the other way around. I was one of those people. The first that time I'd ever heard of vegetarians was because of punk. And it was and a lot of the punk bands were vegetarian. So when you're 15 or 16, those ideas are quite mind blowing. It took me about 3 years to actually work out how to do it. Because the place I grew up in, Blackpool, which is a holiday town in England, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say it was a place of counterculture and hippie culture. It just wasn't at all. It's a very English working class holiday resort. And, like, actually nowadays, they even have a vegetarian restaurant there and a vegan hotel, which is amazing.
Yeah.
It was nothing like that years ago. So it's about music. It's all those bands talk about those ideas. And I know those ideas went before. It's got thousands of years of history all the way back to India. And it goes through 60s hippie counterculture. But the punk thing was the thing that sparked me.
And what is it then about? Yeah, because I heard also like from the punk movement from back then, people from then, like a lot of them are vegetarian or vegan. But what is the link between the punk and vegan vegetarian?
I think a lot of the people in the punk scene had come out the tail end of the hippie scene. So some of those people like Joe Strummer or The Clash, or those kind of people being part of the squat culture in London, where those kind of ideas were going around. So at the time, the hippie culture was seemed like it was something that opposite of punk. But now I look back, it just all blurs into one. It was just another version of the counterculture with similar kind of ideas. In fact, instead of asking people nicely to be vegetarian, punk was probably shouting at people to be vegetarian more. And and a lot of the fanzine culture was really important as well. There's a lot of fanzines around that time, and the fanzines would talk about vegetarian culture and all those ideas, which then seemed like, freak ideas. The idea that, it takes, 7 fields to feed one cow or whatever, and then you kill it and eat the cow. Why don't you just eat the food out of the field in the first place? Which
Yeah.
now are totally mainstream ideas. Even a right-wing paper in England, like the Daily Mail, will do an article on that idea, which then was a really esoteric left field, quite literally left field idea at the time. And when I grew up, there was no idea, no concept of people in the normal world that I grew up with that animals felt any pain. You just thought it's put in front of you, you ate it. You had no idea that it was a sentient creature that died in complete terror, and you had a choice. You didn't need to eat that. You could eat vegetables instead. So that wasn't even part of the debate then. Whereas now, because of the internet and weirdly because of things like Instagram, which really drives the vegan movement
Yeah.
these days, these ideas are everywhere, and that's what's made the massive difference. It's availability of the ideas, and at that time, the only alternative media that we had was punk rock and fanzines and punk rock fanzines.
And what did you so 37 years ago you didn't have like now you have so many like vegan burgers, you have so many great alternatives. What did you eat back then when you stopped eating meat?
We just used to eat stew all the time. We lived in like a band house. There'd be about 8 people living in the house. It's just a big pot, and every night you just add more vegetables into it and just eat it. So it's just stew that's boiled forever, and it's actually quite nice. I mean, it does sound pretty horrible, but after eating like toast and little bits of bacon, I didn't really eat that much meat before I became vegetarian anyway.
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't really afford it most time because I was living the band dole life, so there wasn't much money. You generally eat just cheese on toast for like days on end. So it was actually a step up to eating this endless boiled stew. But we honed it down to perfection, like adding like Marmite in there, loads of things, and we started to learn about all this stuff as it went along. And being somebody who grew up in the 60s in England, like a male in England, you weren't taught to cook. It's just ridiculous. It's embarrassing to even talk about, isn't it? So I had to learn how to cook when I became a vegetarian. And that was great as well. So you start to experiment in loads of different ways of cooking. And then you find out about steaming your vegetables. Then you discover tofu. And then actually, this is quite interesting in this conversation, but I discovered their tempeh when I was in Holland, because in England in the 80s, you couldn't get tempeh anywhere. But in Holland, you can get it in every corner shop because of the empire, wasn't it? Because of Indonesia and that. So I remember eating it, sort of thinking, what is this stuff? It's absolutely amazing. And I went back to England and got the local health food shop in Manchester to stock tempeh. And it took them about 3 months to track it down. And now it's still not that mainstream in England, but it's getting more popular. But I love it. It's one of my favourite foods. So it was a crash course in cooking and discovering all these amazing, wonderful things you can cook. But you know what? If I had to eat lettuce sandwiches all my life, and I didn't have to kill a cow, I would eat the lettuce sandwiches. And the other thing was actually affected me is that when I was at college, I lived next door to an abattoir, and I remember walking past the abattoir often, and the cows would look at you. And first time you just think, well, it's just a cow looking at me. Then you think, oh my God, and you look in its eyes, and you know that it knows. It's not just a cute looking, hairy, big thing. It's actually something it's in total terror, and you can see if you look at its face, it's crying, And I remember going to India. I've been to India a few times, and cows, of course, are holy in India, and they have a completely different expression on their faces. They look like they're at peace because they know nothing. They don't have any predators. They're gods there, I remember I was in a market in India once. Someone threw a cabbage at a cow, and everyone went mad, and they chased the guy out of the market. You don't mess with a cow in India.
That's true. But I think you've been there like a long time ago, because I've been there recently, and there's even like like I've seen cows even though they're holy, but it becomes something that just on paper that they're holy. I've seen cows in terrible situations there now. But you went, I think.
Yeah, it depends where you go. I mean, obviously don't get hunted. But if you go to Delhi, the cows just live in the city. Yeah, and they're all dead skinny because they can't get enough food, and they're just like the people, really. Yeah. Well, the poorer people. These are probably lower caste cows in a way, but there's. I remember also I was in a tuk-tuk once going through India, and this guy was just kicking all the pedestrians out of the way. But when a cow walked across the road, the brakes went on. He didn't want to hit the cow or anything. But I'm not saying that cows are treated like. They don't get banquets every night, but they don't get killed, so it makes them. They don't have that look of fear in their faces,
Yeah, definitely. I was just what you were saying that is that a few days ago a video emerged from India where a man hit a baby cow, and that's I think the first time that happened. But I think there were very bad repercussions for him for doing that. But I'd never seen it in India being that mean to a cow. But India, so you must agree with me on this too. Like India has really good vegetarian food. I became vegan in India. I was there, I think I'm vegan for 3 years. But vegan, that was a challenge, even though that's changing now, because India has a lot of butter and a lot of, so they have amazing vegetarian food. But what did you, when is the last time you went there actually into India?
Well, it's quite a long time now, 8 to 9 years ago now.
Oh, I love talking about India, but let's just...
Yeah, well, it's an amazing place. But it's also it's a very dark place. It's got everything's a massive contrast of colours, smells. It's a very sensual place, but it can stink. It can smell really horrible and smell really beautiful. It can get the most vile poverty and the most ecstatic spiritual feeling right next to each other and things like that, But it's interesting you went vegan in India, because I've been there a few times vegan. It was a lot more difficult, but in a sense I always figured that being a vegan was like a luxury version of a vegetarian. I mean, luckily because I live in the West, I can afford to be a vegan, and it's easy for me to be vegan. I'm not a judgmental person, so you know, if people eat meat, I don't look down on them or think they should do this or that, and I don't tell people what to do. And I understand if you live in India and you're living out in the countryside in India, your choice is, I mean, yeah, of course you can grow vegetables, etc., but your choice is probably smaller because
Yeah,
you've got
true.
less information and less opportunities to be vegan. But the message is, it is permeating out. Interestingly, there's been a rise of veganism in India because of
Yeah,
influence from the West. It's
yeah.
like in India, the first time you go, you expect everybody to be doing yoga on the beach, but no one does yoga in India. It's only got popular in the last few years because
Yeah.
Western celebrities do yoga. So it's kind of like we're influenced by them and they're influenced by us. That circle really fascinates me. But the whole concept of not eating animals pretty well came from India in the first place. It came from the Jains, and the
Yeah.
idea, and I can never get the word pronounced right, ahisma, Ahisma, which is about not non-harming, and it's what Gandhi was into, which influences a lot of Hindu thoughts, but it's originally the Jains that had it. And
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
fascinated by the Jains, and I went to quite a few Jain temples, and I
Oh.
saw those Jain priests that were dressed in the white clothes with the little masks on, not because of the virus, because there was no virus at that time, because they don't want to breathe the microbes in, and they don't want to breathe the flies in. They have like a feather duster to sweep the pavements. They don't tread on any microbes, and they were like the most extreme, hardcore, non-virus to living things, and veganism, whatever that you could possibly have. I can't do. I just can't. I could not get that far. I wish I could actually. It would be good to leave no footprint upon the planet whatsoever. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the aim, isn't it? But you can't beat yourself up over it.
No, that's true, and it's also fun that you said it because I went there the last time I think 2 or 3 years ago, and I went like you said, veganism is really upcoming there now. So I went to a 90% vegan restaurant, and I got to talking to the owner, but he was a Jain, and it was the first time I heard about a religion. Like I didn't know, and they are just hardcore vegan from birth already. Yeah, they just but from their beliefs, not yeah, from their
Yeah,
beliefs. Yeah, they don't harm anything.
I think there's different types of Jains. I think most Jains will be vegan, some of them aren't. But I think the basic fundamental core of religion is about non-harming
Yeah,
and looking after animals. And that was the oldest religion actually in India, isn't it? It's very similar to Buddhism, but Buddhism's more of a philosophy than a religion. But Buddhism, they definitely have very similar tenets and very similar, ideas. But I think Jainism is actually older.
yeah.
So, but the temple. If next time you go to the temples. They're built out of white marble. They're quite
Yeah,
mind blowing. They're quite beautiful.
I
Yeah.
can't wait to start. We were just talking about it. Can't wait to start traveling again when everything opens up.
Well, it might be a few years actually. But I can't wait for it. Just have a cafe that's open. I can go sit in.
Yeah, that's
I'll
true.
take that
Yeah,
now.
yeah. But that was also interesting because I said it was actually my last question. But since we're talking about the virus a bit, anyways, you told me something interesting because I asked you, are you going to get vaccinated? Because you're almost 60. I mean, you're at the age that it would be good to get it, and you said you don't know if the vaccination is vegan. I didn't think about it yet. It's not vegan.
Well, I think it is. I think there was a debate about this. So what I was told by my brother, who's a virologist who works at WHO, he said they synthesize because there's a lot of vaccines use egg whites to bind them together. But I think what they've done is they synthesize the egg whites, not because they any kind of vegan moral stance, but I think it's just easier to replicate it than try and get loads of egg whites out of eggs and things. But I think at the end of the day, your own survival is important as well. There's no point in protecting loads of animals and you just drop dead yourself. You know, I mean, at the end, you have to go. Your instinct is always about survival.
Yeah.
So if the planet was wrecked, if a meteorite hit the planet like the end of the dinosaurs, and we had to, and our diets had to change to survive, then they would have to change to survive. But like I say, at the moment, I live in a position. Luckily, fortunately, I live in a space where I can live with these kind of ideals, you know. But like I say initially, I don't live by these ideals as a pecking order to make me feel more saint-like than anybody else. It just feels right to me personally to not eat animals. But if I speak to somebody who ate animals or whatever, I wouldn't say, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that."
No. Yeah.
But I
True.
mean, but I would discuss it with him, you know. But I wouldn't be hectoring. I don't think hectoring ever works,
No.
or lecturing people. I'll just do it by example. Because it's
It's
weird. Because when I go to the gym, because I like training, People at the gym are all, well, actually for years, they were so freaked out. They couldn't work out how because I can lift quite heavy weights, etc. They could not work it out how somebody who's vegan could do weight training. But I say some of the most famous bodybuilders in the world, all the way back to the 1950s, were actually vegan because they studied diet, a lot of them. And they worked out that a plant-based protein diet was actually better for them than an animal-based protein diet. What's interesting now is the last time I went to the gym, which was actually sadly about a year ago, there was quite a lot of vegans in there. So that, especially in the younger people. So it's actually, and there's a lot of women that were vegans. There's actually quite a few of the men were becoming vegan as well. And that was interesting. That was in a gym, which is it's not the punk rock world or the world I live in. This is like normal people going in there, etc. And it become, and I was interested to see how it started to impinge on normal lives, because it used to be something the only other people you ever seem to meet who were vegetarian or vegan just seem to be musicians all the time for such a long time. And it'd always be like people who ran clubs always going, oh God, I'm not bloody vegetarians again. So they'd always give you a packet of crisps or something. That's always like in the 80s. No one really understood what it was. They just thought you were just trying to be difficult. And you always go, no, it's just easier. All you have to do is just, look, if you don't really understand what it is, just give us 4 bananas and some bread. That's like touring East Europe in the 1980s was like that. It was like trying to get vegetarian food in East Europe in the 1980s was a nightmare when we toured there. But last time I went to Russia about a year and a half ago, and it had amazing vegan, loads of hipsters in Moscow. It's the coolest city. But people always think it's this very stern place. It's nothing like that. It's got an amazing music scene. And it's got loads of great vegan cafes, which you can get vegan sushi in, vegan this, vegan that. And it's very, very popular there as well. So it's, I'm sure the other cities are different, but Moscow being the capital, the biggest city, has got a different vibe to it. But it was there as well. And I was thinking, wow, we're winning this argument, aren't we?
Yeah, and especially like you said, I was talking to Dale also about it. Especially England is a big example for the whole of Europe. Like I think the milk industry went down by 1/3, and I think you have the most vegan restaurants there. So it's a really it's a really good example, and it's kind of like slowly spreading through the rest. Like Holland now has in Amsterdam, I think we have 40 vegan restaurants. We're based in Rotterdam that has I think around 10. So it's like going really fast, and people are really seeing the benefits of this. So you went vegetarian, then vegan, and then you're also now like, would you call yourself now a little bit of vegan activist or just a vegan? Because you organize a vegan festival, you've written a book with about the life of Dale Fins. Do you consider yourself a vegan activist?
In a sense, but I don't believe in battering the message into people. I mean, do things like this is great, just talking about how it personally affects me. If people watching this get any inspiration or empowerment from, I'm sure everyone watching this is vegan anyway. But you know what? I've been on national TV talk about being a vegan, and arguing about it on TV, but not. I'm not saying to the viewers, I demand that you become vegan. I just present the case, Yeah. Here I am. I'm nearly 60. I'm in pretty good shape for somebody who's nearly 60. Yeah. And I've also managed not to kill about 650 cows to get here, and I feel good about that for me personally. Yeah. But I'm not judgmental, like I was saying. Like if people watching this eat meat, all I say to people is just know where that's coming from. With that bacon sandwich, know where it comes from. Yeah. That's the one thing that always confuses me, that people will go, oh, look at that lamb, look at that pig, isn't it beautiful? Then they'll go and eat lamb or pork for tea. And I think that kind of split in thinking, I find that confusing, because I wasn't presented those ideas as younger. We used to think they were separate things, we had no idea because it was never discussed. But now those ideas are out there, so everybody should. But once you've made your mind up, and once you go, okay, I'm cool with that, I can look into that lamb's baby sheep's face, and I know, and I don't feel bad about eating it. Then that's okay. You've made peace yourself. Yeah. Well, I think there's an awful lot of people in the middle who, if they actually could see what happened in abattoirs and saw how the food got onto their plate, would rethink it. And it's a far easier diet. It's not difficult. It's so easy to do now. It's it's not like when I was growing up, the local shop idea of vegetables would be a lettuce and an onion and a potato, which is okay because they're fundamental vegetables. But it's after a year of eating that, you'd be going completely crazy. Whereas now, there's a lot more choice and it's a lot easier to get the food, and it's not expensive either, like people say. and it's easy to cook. It's actually a very lazy, easy diet that's very healthy. You know, with meat, you have to be very careful you don't poison yourself, but with vegetables, I mean, God, you could just wash them and eat them straight away. It's not hard to be a vegetarian or a vegan.
No, it's no, especially like if you live in England and if you live in Holland, it's very easy to be a vegan now. The supermarkets are full of vegan option alternatives. There's basically no more excuse to not be a vegan in these two countries. Not every country, but in those two countries, I can say there's no excuse to just become vegan.
Well, it's like I say, it's a luxury thing, and it's interesting you mentioned England before because living in Manchester, we had the first modern vegetarian society in the West. Actually, it was in 1847, that's when they started. It's still running now, actually. So Manchester was actually a driver in the modern idea. It didn't invent it, of course didn't invent it, we talked about India before, but the idea, the notion of modern vegetarianism and the European method of it started here. And it started about a mile away from where I live in the town centre when it was a priest in a local church. And he took it as a religious thing. He looked at it as, you know, if God created all these animals, you know, and they're sentient beings, why are we killing them and eating them? So his angle on it was different, and that's how. And he started the Vegetarian Society. And when Gandhi came to he lived in England for a few years. He came up to Manchester, and he was surprised by the amount of vegetarian restaurants that are in Manchester in about 1870, 1880. So it's been around a long time. But Manchester was always a revolutionary, forward-thinking city. So I was quite proud of that fact.
Yeah.
You know, so it's interesting you mentioned England being a driver of it. I mean, these days you go. I mean, a place like Berlin. I think Berlin's probably got the most vegan places. You go to like
Europe,
Kreuzberg. I think if you go to Kreuzberg, it'd be impossible to find a piece of meat. But do you know what the city, the most vegan restaurants in the whole world is actually Tel Aviv, which is one that always surprises people, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I know that, but there's such a contradiction also in it because it's also very meaty. When we just started the Animal Reader, we started like last year. Our third interview, I think, was with someone from an animal foundation in Israel, and it's such a contradiction because the country has the most vegan restaurants, and still they eat a lot of meat there.
Yeah, I think one of the cheats is because falafels, obviously they're big fast food.
Yeah, true.
And a lot of falafel joints in Tel Aviv are actually vegan by default because even there's just tahini paste to put on them. But there's also it's quite different from the rest of Israel. Tel Aviv is a much more hippie sort of version of the rest of Israel. So it's not hardcore. So the people who live there are more drawn towards those kind of more forward-thinking counterculture ideas, you know, a bit like Amsterdam or Holland is, you know, I mean, the idea that we have of Holland is not the whole of Holland. You know, if you go outside the main cities, it's actually a very traditional, quite right-wing country, isn't it? It's not. I mean, in England, we think Holland's like everyone smokes dope and got long hair and a bit of the hippie. You know, that's just bits of it, isn't it? You know, you get these kind of really sort of shorthand versions of anything like veganism, isn't it? I mean, for years, I was always going to vegan conferences, talk about being a vegan, because they always dragged me in because I didn't look like the cliche of a vegan, because it was always that idea you had to have like a little beard and sandals and be a bit hippie-ish, which I never actually met anybody ever looked like that who was a vegan, because everyone I knew who was a vegan was kind of from my world, but these get me in as kind of, oh, look, there's kind of this freaky, unlikely looking vegan, and I'll do all these panels and talks at VegFest and things like that about it, you know, like, just trying to break the cliche of it, because obviously that was seen weird now because there's more than 500,000 of us, so they're all different types of vegans, but you'd only have to go back 10 years and there's only about 40,000 vegans in the UK. You know, it's amazing how it's mushroomed.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you come to writing the book? How did you meet Dale Vince, and how did you come to writing the book about his life? You co-wrote it with him.
Well, I've heard about Forest Green Rovers, the vegan football club, and I was fascinated by it. And then I saw what he'd done then. I read about an interview about the football club. So I just messaged him on Twitter and I said, I'm really interested in what you're doing. Then I learned about ecotricity as well. I said, can I come? I'll just pop over and interview you. He's the other end of the country. I'll get a train down there, because I thought he seems like a really interesting guy. This will be a great interview. And I went there and I got on them like a house on fire, because the real bonding moment was, he said, in 1980, he went to a really boring polytechnic, which is like an old English version of university, in a small market town in England. I said, oh my God, you can't have gone to Stafford. And he goes, that was the one. I go, well, I was there at the same time. and we were actually there at the same time. We hadn't met each other. I don't know how, because it was only about 10 people there who had been to that kind of culture. I mean, he can't have ever gone into that college once, and all the time he was there. So we had quite a few parallels in our lives. The area I live in, Manchester, a lot of the travellers lived in for years as well. And I knew a lot of people at the Battle of Beanfield. So it was a really fascinating interview. So he said he was working on a book. Do I want to help him with the book? So the original idea is I'd be the ghostwriter. So I wrote it, then he rewrote it into his own voice, which I prefer really, because it should be his book, in his voice. It was somewhere between doing a really long, detailed interview with him and writing it all down to give him the platform to write the book. Because I think the hardest thing for anybody writing their own book is to actually remember their own story. I mean, your own life, you don't really think about it very much, and you have no idea what the set pieces are, the interesting pieces. So to me, that bit where he's on the motorbike going back to the beanfield to tell him about the cops, I thought that's the opening scene of the film, of the book, which hopefully I'll make one day.
Yeah.
But to him, that was just him on his bike. Well, it was just me on my bike going back and telling him, no, to me, I could see the whole opening shot of a film there. It's like Apocalypse Now or something.
Yeah, but it is.
And I love his ideas, and I love the way he's self-taught, and I had met him as well, because he also at Glastonbury, he had his original windmill was for powering mobile phones, and I'd used that about 20 years ago, 25, even 30 years ago. I can't remember now, but I remember talking to the guy who had that windmill, which was Dale. I was going, I go, God, I have met you before. So our paths had crossed in weird ways, and I like the way he's never really been trained in anything, but he could do anything because he has no fear. And I like those people who have ideas, and people go, "You're mad." You go, "It doesn't matter. I don't care what you think. I'm going to make it happen anyway. And if it doesn't happen, I'm just going to carry on." And that's what Dale's like. So there was a few things. I mean, I'm not an engineer and I can't build things, but I'm an ideas person as well. I like big ideas, and the bigger the better. And I like that about Dale. He didn't have any fear. So he took over a football club, and turned it into a vegan football club in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of part of the countryside where everybody breeds cattle, and he's taught them all about vegetarianism, and he didn't hector them. He just said, "Look, I'm a vegan. I can't sell meat to my football club. You're going to have to eat vegan burgers." And everyone complains, but then they started eating. They go, "God, these taste better than normal burgers." And we said, "This is green populism in action. Let's take populism away from the right wingers." And people go, "Oh, it's a dreaded word. Oh, populism means popular. It doesn't mean right wing. It's only because all those horrible right wing people robbed it. Why don't we just give normal people?" Because it's quite snobby to think that normal people can't embrace these ideas. And this is what me and Dale are really into. These ideas are taking what are esoteric fringe ideas and put them totally into the mainstream. So it's not just like people at Worm in Rotterdam, which is a fantastic venue run by really good people. It's the people who live on the estates on the edge of Rotterdam, who these ideas aren't necessarily. They probably go, "These ideas aren't for the likes of us." And me and Dale say, "Yes, they are. Of course, they're for everybody, And with football, which is populist, Dale brings ideas in there. Burgers, he brings them in with that, and energy and all those ideas in music. Let's take it to all the people. These aren't just ideas for like in India. It's the Brahmins, isn't it? They preach the higher castes are the vegetarians. Well, that's great, but what about everybody else? These are wonderful ideas, and these are ideas that are good for everybody mentally, physically, and spiritually. They're for everybody, but it doesn't mean that anyone's going to stop you having fun. You see, that's what I like about Dale. It wasn't this pious thing that you can't have football or cars. You're just going to have cars that don't pollute the environment, and football where cows don't get killed to make you food. You still have the same things, but nothing gets harmed in the way. And I really like those ideas. It's taking it right to the frontier of culture. So we're working on another couple of things at the moment. We have this kind of education idea that we're sort of knocking about and things, and it's the revolutionary ideas, but mainstream revolutionary. To make people better, because I think in negative times and dark times, and where everyone's bickering and shouting away on Twitter, we're kind of quietly getting on with making big ideas and putting them into action. Instead of just shouting. People shout and don't listen anymore, and it's just really tedious, isn't it?
Yeah, and Just for everybody listening, because we're talking about Dale, and Dale Finch is in England. He has a windmill company, but he's the biggest green energy company, and it's basically from his life as in building the first windmill and his ideas. It's a really, like you just mentioned it too. It reads very easily. The book is called Manifesto, and I don't know if I said it correctly in English, but I don't know. Manifesto.
Yeah. Manifesto, yeah. Yeah.
And but it reads like a movie. I was saying the same thing. Like, this should be a movie, because not a lot of people read nowadays anymore. So if it could be a movie, do you know if there are any plans for that, or that's?
When I wrote the initial version of it, I wrote it as a film in my head because I like to think pictorially. I'm not a proper writer. I like to think visually, and when I do music, I think visually. Everything's visuals. It's like running a movie in your head, isn't it? And I could run his whole life as a movie in my head, and that's how I wrote it down. Well, I'm not saying I wrote the book though. I mean, Dale just took what I'd given him and wrote it in his, like I say, in his own voice. But the structure is quite similar in a sense.
Yeah.
And it was there is ideas. I have floated around a few people because I've got a couple of film projects I'm working on at the moment. And it is one of the ideas we put on the table. People go, that is a good idea. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody watching this probably watched the Dale one, but a quick resume of his life is, he was a traveller, new age traveller. He lived in a bus. He had no money. He was just going from one festival to another for 10 years. And then he got to Stroud, and it took him 5 years to build a windmill in this farmer's field. And when he got it worked up, he linked the farmer's little hut, like the house or whatever. It's a fallen down house, and he gave him electricity from his windmill, and that windmill's still there. He took me to see it, actually. It's still on the hill after 26 years. And then he started making them, and he's a multimillionaire now because of this. But he's using the money to create the money is to create space to make these ideas happen. It's about, he's got this. He's taking vegan food into primary schools, 300 primary schools. It's all amazing stuff. This is. And the green energy thing's big for him, and the idea is everything has to be green energy in the end. And the politicians are listening now, because it's no longer, like I said before, initially with veganism, which used to be vegan recipes, vegetarian recipes in punk fanzines. It's mainstream, but it's not a weird idea. This is starting to move into the mainstream, because even Boris Johnson, he's a complete idiot, but he's trying his best now to embrace green ideas. You think that's not from your heart, is it? That's actually because you realise that even business needs to go green. Otherwise, you just don't have business anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, what? Even if he's doing it for all the wrong reasons, if we get the right results, we get the results. If we don't if we don't destroy the atmosphere, if we don't destroy all animal life. I actually interviewed Paul Taylor yesterday from Sea Shepherd, and he was a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
A lot of the ideas tally up, and he's big mates with Dale, and these are powerful ideas, but they're obvious ideas, and it's interesting with his life curve is interesting, because for years he's treated as an eco-terrorist. He couldn't, even now he can't leave America because he'd get arrested, but at the same time he's got governments from all over the world contacting him, asking him how to make their economies and their business greener and more eco. It's ironic, isn't it, that he's become half respectable. But I think that's a good thing, because these ideas are respectable. They were never terror ideas. To me, the terror is sticking a bolt in a cow's head just so you can eat half your tea and throw the rest of it in the bin. To me, that's sick. That's mental, because we have the choice as animals. I mean, it's different if you're a dog. A dog is built to eat meat, but we don't have to eat meat. I mean, our bodies are built to eat a small piece of meat once a month, and the rest of it's all plants. But you know what? We don't even need to eat that small piece of meat. I mean, there's so many other protein sources. We just don't need to eat it.
No.
And we don't have to play that game anymore. It's the 21st century. Once we get over this bit, things are going to get a lot better, because these ideas are going to really surge.
And what are your plans? Because you did a vegan festival, but I'm sure in 2020 that didn't go through because of the coronavirus. But you did it in 2019, I think, or 2018. That was the first edition.
It was 2018. Yeah, I did it in Manchester. It was a 2-day festival, and the best thing I had in it was I did the keynote interview with Sean Ryder from the Happy Mondays, who's trying to be vegan, but and he can't do it, and he finds it really difficult. And I thought that was really wonderful, because it wasn't a judgmental thing. It wasn't say you should do this and that. And I don't know if you know Sean Ryder. He's a fantastic Sean. He's really funny. He's just a normal lad who ended up in a famous band in England. But he's a heroin addict for 35 years. I mean, he's cleaned up now. He's led a very dissolute, derelict lifestyle. Somehow got out the other side. His wife's vegan, but he can't do it, and he's just going, I can't fucking give up fish. I can't do it. I try my best, and to me, because he was trying so hard to get to that point, it was actually better than everyone else in the room, because for me it was easy. I never particularly liked eating meat that much, so it's very easy for me to not eat it. Giving up cheese, slight struggle, not that difficult, but for him it was very difficult, and he's got an addictive personality anyway. So I was more impressed by his journey because it was a tougher journey for him, and that was for me. That was the message from that keynote interview. It's as long as people take a part of the journey and get as far as they can, that's good. If somebody gives up meat one day a week, that's a start. That's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
You don't go vegans overnight. People go vegan overnight. They don't do it properly. They don't feel very well. They go back to meat again. Just doing little bits, Just take a bit out here, take a bit out there. Yeah,
exactly. That's how I think when I stopped eating meat 12 years ago, but I just went instantly stopped eating meat, and then I went a bit bad, and then I learned about replacers, and then I went better. But
you should never beat yourself up though. If people go back to eating meat, okay. It's like meditation, the monkey mind, isn't it? When you meditate and you think, God, how many voices are there in my head? And they call it the monkey mind, don't they? And Western people panic and go, I can't do it. But in the East, they just say, just let the monkeys talk. They'll shut up. They'll just gradually go quiet. And then you just go back on the meditation. And that's the same with a lot of people will become vegetarian, then they'll have a bacon sandwich. But then just go the next day, start again. Just go vegetarian again. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it.
Yeah, but so I did when I had the same thing because I became I stopped eating meat because I became vegetarian first 12 years ago. But then I would eat a burger somewhere. I'm like, oh my God, I messed up. But eventually, I'm like you said, I'm very visual person. So back then it was 15 years ago. Back then you had PETA had all those horrible images, so I printed them all out black and white paper. And wherever I did where the mirror is, where you do your makeup, I just put all those pictures. So for 3 years, if you came into my room, it was horrible. But it was all these pictures of the most horrible. But that's how I actually, because I think a lot of people, if they were to see it constantly, they wouldn't eat it. Because you forget, when you see a burger, you don't see a cow anymore, or when you see steak or you don't see the animal anymore. And I think a lot of people, if they were to see the animal, that's for me worked a lot to just see it every day.
Well, it's one of the really profound problems of Western culture, that we're so detached from nature, aren't we? And it's the same. I'm the same as everyone else, and I love nature, but I also respect the brutality of nature. I mean, nature's not all cuddly little mice, is it? I mean, it's animals fighting to the death and killing each other. And I talk about this a lot with Chris Packham, the nature presenter in England. Mm-hmm. And and what's great about Chris, he's an old punk, so he talks to me about punk. I talk to him about nature, but we both agree in the middle that nature is completely beautiful, but also utterly brutal. And it's but we're detached from it. So to us in a way, it is only beautiful. It's only cuddly little mice or whatever, but you have to embrace a wasp, you have to embrace a sea slug as well, or you have to even embrace the pandemic, strips of RNA. It's all nature, and it's all kind of forms of life in a sense. And so we live in this world we're talking now on bits of technology, and I love technology. Technology is brilliant because it makes our lives easier, but you also have to spend at least part of the day walking in the rain and being cold. And I'm just looking I can look out my window and I watch the magpies and the crows every single day fighting each other, and it's and that way it's only small. But I live in a city, but it's trying to attach back onto nature as well and feel the power of nature and how small we are. We're nothing, are we? In 100 years' time, no one's going to care about this conversation. No one's going to care about me. I'll be gone. I'm here for a briefest flicker of time, nothing compared to the dinosaurs. The fact that we're even here is by mistake. If that meteorite had missed the Earth 65 million years ago, we wouldn't even be here. So it's an utter fluke. And I like those
Yeah.
ideas because it definitely puts you in your place. But that detachment is not good. So when you see the burger, you should always think about where everything came from and what it is and why it's there and why you're eating it and why you don't have to eat it. Or everything you breathe, or everything you do, and everything you take. And it's like the hippies. And in the end, I thought I wasn't really a punk at all. I was actually a hippie all the time. But I like that about the original hippies, because the original hippie ideas actually came from Germany. They came through the Nature Boys, they were called, and they took their ideas from the German back to the land people of the 1870s who went to live in nature and live in the forests. Some of those people took a very righteous route into and influenced all the ideas of the counterculture, vegetarianism, etc. Some of them took a much worse route and actually fed into the Nazis and stuff like that. So it's a trouble with humans, isn't it? Because every brilliant idea that humans have, somehow we can either make it completely beautiful or we can corrupt it to make it utterly evil. But maybe that's like nature as well. Maybe we have to recognise the beauty and the terror at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm thinking about it. But what are your But you're 60, so you thought a lot about these things, right? About life and the meaning of life for yourself.
Yeah.
And what is your like I'm interested in this. What is your biggest, so you probably have like maybe 50 more years to go, 60, 70 maybe even if you're vegan. But what are you, like so far what is your biggest life lesson then? What is the thing you would like tell your, it's such a cliche question I think, but it's still like what would you tell your 20-year-old self now?
Well, I probably think, I don't think things I think is too much difference. I think there would be the same kind of things in a sense, but you kind of know more about them, I suppose, don't you? So,
Yeah.
I think even then and even now, I would think if you have an idea, you just do it, and try not to have the fear, because everybody has the fear, don't they? The fear of failure. But there's not. But then everything I've done doesn't really. It's always worked with the parameters of failure. I've made music all my life. It's never been particularly successful in mainstream terms, but artistically it's been successful, which in the end is actually more important in a sense. Because you know what, once you're on your deathbed, 100 million quid ain't going to make no difference anyway.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So I think all those things are important. And I think all those things I talk about, like try not to get that sense of detachment from the environment or whatever. We're part of the environment. We're not floating above it. We're not. The humans aren't in the middle of all this. We're just another animal on this earth. The bacteria don't care who we are. The bacteria run this planet. We're just here for the moment, and then when we go, we'll either develop into something else or obliterate ourselves, and the bacteria will just carry on. The planet. We don't save the planet. The planet's capable of saving itself. In a sense, by looking after, by trying to stop all the pollution, trying to stop all this mindless slaughter of animals. It's actually saving ourselves more than the planet. The planet will do fine, thank you very much. If we carry on down this line, I'm sure Dale said this as well, we'll wipe ourselves out. We'll take a big chunk of the planet with us, but it'll just carry on. When the meteorite hit Earth and destroyed the dinosaurs and 80% of life, the other 20% just reconvened and went off in a different direction. So if we collapse the whole planet, and even if we take 90% of all life with us, it just carries on in a different way. Maybe the sea cucumber will become the dominant life form and have a huge brain and grow little hands. There's so many different ways it could go. It doesn't. It's not eternity. Eternity is not the human race. And it makes me laugh when people get patriotic about borders. This is England. This is Holland. This is Luxembourg. They're just temporary lines in the sand. In a million years' time, none of those things. Nobody even know those things ever existed. They won't even matter. And that is. I like those ideas, that kind of mindset. When you take a step out of thing. To put that into a context very quickly, is if you look at the sky, every star in the sky does not exist anymore. because the light only just got here. And it's a profound thought, and the more you think about it, the more it puts everything into perspective.
True. It's really true. Have you ever, like, talking to you now, you have so many, I think you've traveled a lot, and you have a lot you learned yourself and you've done, but have you ever thought about writing your own book, an autobiography about your own life?
Weirdly, yeah, I've been asked to do it. So, there's an agent asked me to do it a few months ago. So I'm just putting little bits of it together at the moment. And also, there's a quite big film director based in Istanbul who wants to make a film about me and all these ideas as well. And in a sense, it wouldn't really matter if any. And I think one of the coolest things you could say is actually it doesn't really matter who I am. You know, the ideas are bigger than the person. You know, so it'd be interesting to have a film about a person where you didn't really care who the person was. Because to me, I'm not interested in celebrity culture anyway. I think because I do a lot of in conversations where we interview other people, and they're all, you know, great musicians, interesting people. But I think you could do an in conversation with anybody, you know. And I think everybody's got an interesting story to tell. You know, if you're at a bus stop, I've often thought of that, just taking 2 seats down to a bus stop and get me an iPhone saying, let's do a 1-hour interview about your life. It'd be really, really fascinating. Everybody's got an interesting tale to tell. Yeah. But I'm lucky that I'm in a position that somebody will give me money to make it into a book or into a film. You know, that's the only extra I would have, that I'm in a fortunate media position where I would get indulged to do it.
So you're going to write it about your life, like it's gonna come, your book.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's going to go across the whole universe. It's going to go everywhere.
Oh, nice. And by when do you think you finished it? You'll finish it?
Probably at the end of the year, because one of the things about the pandemic downtime is there's a hell of a lot of stuff. Luckily for somebody like me that I can do, you know, because I can't tour in a band and I can't go around talking at different conferences in Europe, etc. But I can sit here and do the stuff. I've written 2 books already in this period. So I wrote the Dale book. I did the work for the Dale book. And I also wrote a book about the history of goth culture, you know, the dark culture. And I started this kind of autobiography book as well, and all the different projects, because I don't do manual work. So I'm lucky I can sit there with a laptop in a chair and run my little, run my empire on a cushion on my knee. So I'm fortunate in this position, although it doesn't make me feel any better because it's so claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird because I live a very public life and I know lots of people, and you see lots of people go out a lot and you endlessly meet people all the time normally, but now I see about one person a week in the distance as I'm jogging around Manchester.
Yeah, that's kind of, but it's I think a few more months we have to do this. I think, I don't know, a few more months. In England, probably sooner you'll be over. Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. I mean, it depends how the vaccine works, you know, and what the long term, you know, if it works in a way that we can actually return to some semblance of normal life. Nobody 100% knows yet, but we will have more space. At the moment we're in a heavy lockdown, but we may go back to a tier 3 when we can sit outside cafes. And like I say at the beginning of this interview, that was seemed like the greatest thing ever, that you could just take my computer, go sit outside a cafe with my pot of tea and feel connected to the human race again.
Yeah, true. Feeling connected again. That's something I like. I was just talking about it here in the studio also, that's something I'm really starting to miss after a year, just that connection with people. But you appreciate also what we had, kind of. That's also the good thing about this period, like you really, such simple things that you didn't really think about before, you now really think about.
Yeah, I think we're lucky, like somebody said, it happened in this period actually, because 40 years ago, if the pandemic could hit any time, we would have been like sat there with probably without a phone, a lot of us in England. The TV ended at 11 o'clock at night. Sat there staring at the walls, you know. It was bad enough in the 70s and 80s without a pandemic landing on top. But now we could do all this stuff because the amazing technology we got, you know, even the home deliveries of groceries, which would be so difficult to do without the internet. True. So we do. There are some pluses, and when I talk about being detached from nature, I wasn't running technology down because I love technology. I think you can have both, and human ingenuity always blows my mind. You know, the way that they could invent come up with that vaccine so quickly was amazing. But I knew they would. You know, the Oxford people, the day, even very early on when this thing was coming, I remember being at Dale's in December, and I remember saying to Dale, I can see this coming. There's going to be a lockdown, you know, and he knew it was coming, but he didn't know it was going to be that extreme. And I've got it on tape, because the conversation we're having about it, and I was going, because I had to follow the SARS thing before, and I was thinking, God, if that gets out, you can't really envisage it, but with this one, I thought this one looks like it could actually get out a lot quicker. You know, and then because my brother knows about viruses, he was going, it's not looking good. Yeah, but in a way, even though the virus is vile, you got to go, isn't that an incredible thing? It took the world over in about 48 hours. Once it was out, you couldn't get it again. And no matter how high and mighty the human race thinks it is, we're completely flawed by a stranded RNA. You know, and it should have put us in our place. But then you get all these people going on the internet with conspiracy theories, etc., because they still think the humans control it. It's Bill Gates; he controls it. There's no way nature can actually beat the humans. No, sorry guys, but it was nature. At any minute, it could be nature again. It's Bill Gates, maybe smart and rich, but he ain't that smart and rich. You know, nature's always got one up on us.
Yeah, but I hope also that it. What my fear is after this period, that it will pass, we'll be vaccinated everybody, and we'll just forget that it was nature. Like, because to me it feels like also nature is trying to tell us something, like start treating us better, kind of. But I'm really scared that once we can do everything again, we'll just in no time go back to our normal lives, like just do however. And so I hope it puts some people thinking about maybe eating less meat. Maybe for me, for instance, like my parents live in Aruba. And I used to just go all the time, like tickets are very cheap from Holland, so I used to just go. But this period really made me realize, like, I should stop using an airplane that much, so do it a little bit less. Even though I miss traveling, but still
there's a few things there, actually. I don't think nature is trying to tell us anything, because nature doesn't care about us. We're just part of nature. You know, it's like I said before, you know, even if we took down 90% of life and we go down, it'll just carry on without us. It'll just go another direction. It's a sixth great extinction. There's already been 5. The Permian extinction, which is somebody can answer it now, but it's about 400 million years ago, wiped out 98% of life on Earth, and it just carried on. That was the end of the trilobites, but the 2% that was left went off another direction. So nature doesn't care. Nature is not a sentient thing, unless you go to the planet Gaia theory, which I do find fascinating. That you know, that we're actually, the whole planet Earth is a living being on its own, and we're just part of that living being. And you can extend that out as a universe guy. And I love all those ideas because they make my mind really go out on a psychedelic tip, and I love that feeling. Yeah. But so I don't think nature was ever sending us a warning. I think we should take the warning. And I know what you mean, we probably won't take the warning, but I think before this came in, the thinking was changing anyway. Because of Greta Thunberg, because the people under 25 have a different mindset now. Not all of them, but a bigger chunk. The mind generation, there's a very different mindset now. A lot of the people my age, mainly men, they get really angry. They go, oh, Greta Thunberg, she doesn't know she's only a girl, and all the, you know, the only teenage girl, what's she know, you know? And they'll say, this is why I always say to Dale, isn't it great? You know, they say to Greta Thunberg, if you're so smart, why don't you invent an electric plane? Then, you know, then there'd be no pollution when you fly around the world. And I always say, well, you know what you should say, Dale? I'll invent the electric plane. And I said to him about a year ago, he goes, you know what, John? I am inventing the electric plane. And he's working on it now. And he reckons in about 10 years, medium haul flights, they'll have electric planes. And he's also working on the batteries as well, because the batteries are the big problem, aren't they? Because the lithium extraction in Africa is very environmentally damaging. Mm-hmm. And also people get paid slave wages for extracting it. But he's working on that, and several other people are. And I was reading yesterday, they got a new battery in a car that only takes 5 minutes to charge instead of like overnight. So this stuff's moving, this stuff's coming. I think the narrative after this period is going in 2 directions, the world. And we've seen this, it's already happened before the virus. Half the world's going to carry on down the Trumpy road, and the other half of the road is going to go down the Greta road. And I know most of it's sort of in the middle, but you kind of go one way or the other. Yeah, and true. I think hopefully we, you know, what we shouldn't do is shout at the Trumpy world, go, you're all just idiots. I mean, that isn't going to win an argument. They go, we're not idiots, you're idiots, and this is the internet argument, isn't it? I like that Buddhism thing, that idea that when you meditate, you don't just meditate in the sunset. They have these meditations on death, when they go and watch. And I've been to Varanasi and I watch the bodies getting burnt in the Ghats and pushed into the Ganges, and it's powerful. And they have people there that the holy men, the holy women, meditating on these people getting burnt and pushed into the Ganges and meditating on death, and they actually have a special type of holy person called the Agora who paint themselves in the ashes of the people being burnt. So they paint themselves black in the ashes, eat the food out of skulls. They're like the ultimate goths, the king goths, the queen goths, whatever. But they meditate on death because it puts life into a sharper focus. Isn't that an amazing philosophy? Yeah. And part of that culture is also, you should also meditate on the person you really hate and try and feel empathy for them, and also meditate on things that really annoy you and try and resolve it and try and understand it and try and get an empathy with it, because otherwise we go back to that thing I was saying earlier where everybody's shouting and no one's listening. Now, I'm not saying Donald Trump's right, and I have almost zero in common with Donald Trump, but he's a very powerful influence in the world, and there's no point in being in our half of the equation, just shouting. We'll never get Donald Trump back. But there's people in the middle somewhere who are sort of influenced by him. They sort of like what he's saying. But if we're saying to him, look, guys, we're not just a bunch of weird old hippies over here. We're your mates as well. We can have fun over here. We're not that pious. And this is where green populism comes into a sense. It's reaching out to those people.
Yeah.
You can still have all the things you really love doing, but we just don't have to kill a cow to have them or pollute everything. We can still have fun. Dale likes fast cars. He just doesn't want to wreck the atmosphere or the environment by having a fast car or whatever. And I think, I'm not saying that's going to win, but I think that's just a philosophy that kind of works. I mean, it's, to me anyway, personally, the idea of Hisma and that non-violence and that non-violence animals is a beautiful idea, but we have to not have violent thoughts also to the humans, the other animals, our fellow animals of the same species that we share the planet with. And it's pretty damn difficult. So I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but is this a way of resolving the 21st century? Because the moment the 21st century is in polar opposites, it's dangerous and it's not right and no one's happy. So how do we pull that back together again?
Yeah, true. And how like in a short answer, how do we do that?
We have to reach out to the people that we really don't agree with and try and find some communality. There is a communality. We have to eat, we have to breathe, we have to drink water. They feel love, they feel hate, they feel anger, they feel peace. It's all the same things. The stuff we argue with, actually, in the full realm of life, they're very micro things, aren't they? It's like, I like blue, I like red. That's the argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you say, look, we still have to breathe X amount of breaths in our lives, we still have to do the same thing, our bodies function in the same ways. There's actually 99% of us, we've got a lot in common. Maybe we look at the things that we have in common, the things we disagree on, we just go, okay, we disagree on that, but we just have to work around it somehow, because it may not work, but at the moment what we got doesn't work. It certainly does not work at all,
Yeah, true.
I mean, and it was great. I mean, of course it was great that Trump is not the president of America anymore, but if we start shouting loser, loser at all these voters, it's just going to entrench them even more. In 4 years' time, they'll get their revenge, or any politician or any country, because every country's got the same polarization, where our polarization's over Brexit, your polarization's probably over immigration, Germany's polarization will be over something else, it's the same polarization played out on different issues, isn't it, in each country?
Yeah, true. And it's all mostly like, to me, like a lot of it's a lot of egos, right? Like you just mentioned it. You're like the white male of like 60 plus years old. Like you're an exception then, but most white males of 60 plus are very, very headstrong, and those are the leaders of most countries so far. So, but you're right. Like we should come. Yeah, go on.
Actually, I did a talk with this with my sister. My sister's really high up in the United Nations, and she does a lot of leadership roles, and she finds it very difficult because there's a lot of men in the way who won't listen. all these kind of things. So we did a really good job. We've never done a talk together. We did a talk together in Estonia, actually, for this tech conference about leadership and women leadership. And we were talking about, I know it's a bit of a cliche now, but how the women leaders had dealt with the pandemic, generally, not always, but often far better than the men had. And we were trying to work out why that was. And of course, some of the stuff is cliched, what you would come up with the theories of why that happened. And it's not, I mean, and people always say, well, what about Margaret Thatcher, which is kind of, okay, yeah, you got me on that one. But you know, you look at the people running Finland or Estonia or
New
even
Zealand,
Merkel.
yeah.
Yeah, New Zealand, well, she's the number one. But
Yeah.
even Merkel in Germany, and I think Merkel's a fascinating example because she's a conservative. And I'm definitely not a conservative. But I think if you're going to have a conservative, you can go, a conservative you can actually do business with, okay? One, you go, okay, I respect you because I can understand why you think that.
Yeah.
She's that example, and that she dealt. I know it's not easy now because the second or third wave we're up to, but the pandemic, the way they dealt with it initially in Germany was far better, you know, and because she was a scientist, and because the men, a lot of the male leaders in the West seem to take it as a personal insult. It was a macho thing. How dare you, RNA, ruin my personal leadership? That's what Trump and Johnson were like, weren't they? They were sort of standing there with their arms folded, denying its existence, you know, like gunslingers. It's not a personal argument. It's a pandemic. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care if you've got a nuclear arsenal. He doesn't care how macho you strut about or whatever. He's just going to carry on doing its thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I always thought that the pandemic was a mirror held up to every world leader and every person on the planet in a sense. So what you were like as a person reflected straight back at the pandemic and how you dealt with it.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much. It was you are the longest talk we've ever had here,
Okay.
but very.
Hope I was awake.
No, it was. I see the audio guy going like. No, it was. I could talk to you for another hour. It's like we had also about India and traveling and. But it's really like you and Dale, like we were supposed to have the interview with you both together, but then circumstances happened. But it's refreshing to see, to be honest, to see. Men also in leading positions and trying to make a difference in a good direction. And there are more, of course, but it's the book, like I said, the book Manifesto, how we got to the interview with you, is it's a great read for everybody. Everybody listening, like get the book and read it. You can get it, I think, on Amazon. But it's also the idea you have in moving forward, and you have so many ideas. Dale was telling us too, like and you need to influence politics now, but you are also in a position where you can do that. So thank you for doing that. And when your book is finished, let's have another talk again.
Yes, fantastic. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And thank you everybody for watching. Follow us, The Animal Reader, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can, if you just tuned in, you can watch this interview back on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.